I'm a teacher. That's my day job. I teach. I teach intro to writing at USC. I hope that nobody here is affiliated with USC. If you are, keep everything I say a secret. I had one of the star football players in my class. I told the class they could write a story about anything. He wrote a story about wanting to fuck his teacher. Honestly, very nice. My name's Amy Silverberg. In that story, the teacher's name was Jamie Goldstein. Very close. In that story, he said that he wanted to have sex with the teacher on the handlebars of his bicycle. And that afterwards, she would like it very much and feel fulfilled. I was like, you took the teacher's pleasure into account. B+, baby, right? Not everybody does. You have to reward them when they do. I look young, so the female students always email me really familiarly in like lowercase letters. One of my students emailed me, she goes, "Dear Amy, I won't be coming to class today. I took the morning after pill and I don't feel well. ... You know how it is." I was like, why do I know? Of course I know how it is. I was like, stay home, I use the NuvaRing. It's very confusing. Comes out on the dick half the time like a hula hoop. We're still figuring it out, you know? I got a fan letter. I got my first fan letter. Yes, thank you, thank you. It wasn't from stand-up. It was because I published a story in a magazine, and a man emailed me through my website, and he said, "I just want to let you know that that story you wrote kept me up at night, especially the scene where the woman's in the kitchen. Wow." And I wrote back, and I said, "Thank you so much for saying that." And then he wrote back, "Can I come on your tits?" What an elaborate troll. This guy read my fiction. People don't read. He analyzed it. So I wrote back and I said, "It's may I come on your tits." Because you got to get the grammar correct. I myself went to a big party college. Yes, yes. I went to UC Santa Barbara. I used to have a friend at that time who would get so drunk, she would come home, take out a frozen waffle, be too drunk to put it in the toaster, go up to her top bunk, put it in between her hot thighs, and eat it like that, partially defrosted. This friend's now 30. I reminded her of this. She goes, "Oh yeah, the Waffle Trick?" I still do that sometimes on the way to work. I was like, that's so deranged. You could eat a protein bar. You could intermittent fast. And she said, "I like to eat the Eggo from in between my Legos." Which is such a good motto. I was like, you gotta keep doing that. I'm of the age where I'm going to a lot of bachelorette parties. I don't know if anybody here has been to a bachelorette party. Yes, good. Last one I went to, we played this game where we asked the future husband a bunch of questions, recorded his responses, and then in real time asked the future wife, see if their answers matched up. The questions were like, where's the craziest place you had sex? Or when did you know you were in love? We asked her, what's your deepest, darkest secret? She said, well, this is incredibly embarrassing, but I know that this is what he would have said, so I'll just say it. I like having my nipples played with and sucked. That's your deepest, darkest secret? She goes, no. She says, I'm afraid that when I have a baby, it's gonna nurse, and I'm gonna get turned on, and come. We said, what the fuck is wrong with you? Then we played her future husband's response on the monitor. He goes, her deepest, darkest secret. She once had Jack in the Box 5 nights in a row. She said, please don't tell anyone. All right, I'm gonna leave you guys with one more. Have any of you been skydiving? It's great. I went skydiving for the first time recently. When you go skydiving for the first time, you get attached to someone. I was attached to someone very tall. When he saw me, he said, oh good, I like them small. So I was like, this is great, this can't go wrong. I was then attached to his dick. When he walked, my legs flailed in the air. Then we sat in the plane for what felt like a lifetime. And he whispered into my ear, you'd make a great jockey. Not the worst compliment a man has ever given me. Right before he jumped out, he goes, do you want regular or extreme? I was like, I want regular, you fucking loon. I've never been skydiving before. So then he jumped out, me attached, proceeded to give me a tour of his hometown of Lompoc, California. Wind rushing through his hair. He's like, that's the Cheesecake Factory where I met my girlfriend. That's the park where she fucking broke up with me. That's my duplex. I have a roommate. We get a pretty good deal. We have a balcony. We grill out, weather permitting. Then when we landed, he goes, oof, I barely felt you. That's why I like them small. I feel as though I'm on my own. This guy gave a tour to himself.